they suffered at the hands of Michael Jackson.
Hi, my name is Frank Cascio, and I'm willing and more than willing to work on this project with Mrs. Jackson. There's no question that there was moments where Michael was sad and down and upset. He would vent to me and say, "You believe these people think I want anything to do with a child?" Michael was always a positive person, and he tried, especially around us, he was always, no matter what was happening, always smiling, upbeat, and try to be as positive as possible. But there were moments where he would just break down. He says, "I don't think anyone understands. Here I am being charged, falsely accused for child molestation. Every single day, day in and out, I have to go up on that stage and pretend like everything's okay and perform in front of thousands of people day in and out from one city to the next, to the next." It's like, what do these people want from me? It's like, I'm a human being because, I have rhinoceros skin, but I'm a human being. He's like performing, pretending everything's okay. This country, smiling. Meanwhile, he's being accused of a child molestation all around the world, where people think this man is a child molester and he's a child molester when he's not. How would anyone feel when they're falsely accused of something, and especially being at that level and international, everywhere in the world, every front paper, this is what they're talking about and saying? And he is every day, because he's a professional and going out and performing and giving back to his fans, because that's the most important thing to him. One of the things that, when we decided to stay on the tour, Bill, we spoke to Michael, and Bill talked to my father. He says, "Man, I've never seen Michael so, happy like this in weeks. Those boys really, they keep him up. You guys really, he's eating again because he wouldn't eat." Like, with us being there during that time, it took his mind off of everything, because, we just kept him, going, and, he helped us with our homework, and he would eat because, he knew we had to eat, so he would actually sit down and we would all eat together. Because if we weren't there and understanding Michael even later on, he wouldn't, there were times where if no one's around, he would just, sit in his room, and he lived a very lonely life, and it was sad. And I'm happy that I was there for him, and my family was there for him during this time to help him get through it. Michael was, if we weren't around, or he would be alone. It's not like he had groups of friends, or on the weekends went out to nightclubs and hung out with people. It's like he couldn't do that. He's one of the few people in the world, besides the President of the United States, who couldn't walk down the street as himself and a baseball hat without getting mobbed. Even when we would go out in disguise, and he'd be in full disguise, people still had this inkling that was Michael Jackson underneath this disguise. He couldn't do that. So the things that we take for granted as human beings, like going to the grocery store, or taking a walk in the woods, or going to the mall, or going to a movie theater, to us it's like, all right, let's get in the car and go. It's like, no, we had to think everything through in disguise, or sometimes it was really funny, actually. I remember we were in Jersey once, and he wanted to go shopping. It's like, all right. And so we got, at the time my grandmother had a wheelchair, and it's like, all right, we'll push you around in a wheelchair, so it'll really kind of draw people away from. But he was in disguise, and we're pushing him around in a wheelchair, and then we had like our own language, so we'd be speaking a random language to each other, like, and we would understand each other without saying a word of English. And that's how we got around. But the simple things in life that human beings we all take for granted, that was something that he looked forward to. He looked forward to just getting in a car and just driving without security, without anyone. Or he looked forward to, going on walks. And he looked forward to, with no security, Michael and I would just sneak out of the hotel, get in a cab in New York and just drive. And he just wanted to see the city, like he was fascinated by being free and being able to do the little things. And I'm happy that I was able to do that with him and be that outlet and be able to, give him that back and at least show him some kind of simplicity and normality. And again, I think it's one of the things that he loved about my family is we gave him normality, or we tried to give him normality. Yeah, as long as I've known, he had books and books and books and books of just parenting and how to be the best father. And, he took myself and, my brothers and sister and he was almost practicing on us and being a father figure in our life. And he really loved and respected the way my mother and father, raised us. And my mother and father learned so much from Michael, who wasn't a parent at the time, on how to be better parents. And, when we were out of line and I was a kid, he would be the first one to get in my, he'd be the first one to say, put me in line. Don't you ever do that? Or, he'd get upset, or when we were doing something wrong. He wasn't like all fun and games. When I was messing up, even to the last day, he'd be the first one to tell me, you're messing up. You can't do that. And he would get mad. But we had that father, son, brother relationship where it was good. Michael always said, whatever you want or say, whatever you want in life, whatever you envision in life, it will happen if you believe in it. And it's got to be more than just a thought. It's got to be an emotion within yourself. And every day you have to have this emotion. He would, he gave us, I remember, later on in the program of his teachings, let's just say, he'd say, all right, now you're on to the next level. And so he would say, all right, write down your goals. Write them down on a card. Look at it in the morning. Look at it during the day, and look at it in the evening. But in the evening, look in the mirror. Go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, look at yourself, and read this to yourself. And when you can read this to yourself and believe it, and look at the mirror at yourself without hesitation, and it becomes an emotion within you, you're there. And every day, do this. And this is before The Secret came out. This is before any of these books came out recently. This is years and years and years ago. He knew The Secret before The Secret even exists. And I would always ask him, how do you know all of this? Did somebody teach you? He goes, no, Applehead. I had to do a lot of research on my own. I had to teach myself. And he just, anywhere he went, he would just go to the bookstore and just start reading The Law of Attraction, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And I became a fan of Og Mandino. I got all of his books and started reading it. And he really believed that. He believed it within himself, and you can see it in his music and his art. He told me, a story right after Off the Wall, which was a huge success. He wasn't satisfied. He wasn't happy. He knew the day Off the Wall came out, and it was still a huge success, that his next album, he was going to create the biggest selling album of all time. He knew it. He didn't even start thinking about what songs he was going to do, but he knew he wanted to create the biggest selling album of all time. And he did. And you can see it in his songs. He said, when he would be singing the songs, he would transform into that being and put a message and energy, so much energy into that song, where he knew he wanted that song to transcend, in where it became such a hit and it reached people in their hearts. And with his music, he's one of the few artists, maybe there's 2 or 3, that his music will live on for generations to generations to generations. Well, we didn't know. We had no idea. My brother and I, we were he was recording, I think it was the History album. Yeah, it was the History album. We were at Trump Tower in New York City, and we had, we were in his apartment, and we were sleeping, and all of a sudden, I think it was like 4 a.m. Michael gets a call from the head of security at the time, Wayne Nagin. He goes, Michael, the news is out. It's going to be all over the news tomorrow. We got to get those kids home. Because we didn't, he was going to be the center of attention, paparazzi, and he wanted to protect us, obviously. And so it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I remember having to sneak out of Trump Tower, like under blankets, and Wayne drove us back to New Jersey. And Michael said, I got married to Lisa Marie. It's going to be all over the news today. It's better for you guys go back, because I don't want to drag you into this and make you the center of attention. He just wanted to protect us like we've done all our life. And he got married to Lisa Marie. Again, I didn't really think anything of it. In a funny way, it was, I'm so used to Michael just doing these random things, and that's Michael, one day to the next so it didn't really faze me at the time. Whereas, like, okay, you got married, and he goes, yeah, I'm going to explain everything to you later. We got married in the Dominican Republic, and but you guys got to go. It's like, okay, but I didn't really, that was Michael, and I understand if it was anyone else, people would be like, what do you mean you got married? You didn't tell anyone? But in Michael's world, there was like, no rules, and sometimes it's extremely unorthodox. But that was Michael's world. That's his normality. That's what he's used to and being like. And I can understand, like, from the outside looking in, it's like, what do you mean? You just get married from one day to the next, and no one knew, but that was normal to me. And as strange as that may sound.